big question we're pondering is, how might we play our way to collective liberation? We're going to tap in today into that creative potential of what it could be like to center joy in food, land, and culture work. A lot of the time, play, that word sort of conjures images and associations with like kid stuff, like my 3-year-old that you heard a little while ago, whatever she's up to now that she's calmed down and hanging out with her toys, which is awesome. And I love it. But you know what? We serious adults, we play. There's different ways of playing, and it's important to us. So a question that we're going to be chewing on together is, what would the world look like if we all fed that collective capacity to play, to embrace play? So we have 2 cultural practitioners who happen to center fun and joy and play and humor in their work. And we're diving in with Kai and KJ into how play can offer us a path towards deep nourishment and how it can be a tool for transformation. So I'm going to, Kai and KJ, we're spotlighting you all in a sec. I'm going to give your little bios, and then I'm going to invite you all to help set the table virtually for all of us. So I'll start with Kai. Kai Tzeng is the creator of Cattails Comix and a creative improv facilitator. Cattails Comix is an ecological comic strip from the imagined perspective of all non-human beings inextricably tied to our human decisions. It's a joy to read that comic, by the way. I encourage you all to check it out. It's posted on Instagram pretty regularly too. This comic strip from the imagined perspective of non-human beings tied to our human decisions is something that takes that idea of like our human-centric way of thinking and turns it on its head in a fun way. So Kai pulls from Taoism, social movement history, emergent strategy, pre-industrial building practices, and relationship ecology to coax together ideas into art that they share and give through the spirit and practice of gift economy. Fabulous. We're so excited to have you today, Kai. I'd also love to introduce KJ. We're excited to have you. KJ Kearney is the founder of Black Food Fridays, a popular and award-winning social media account and initiative to encourage people to support Black-owned food and beverage businesses each and every Friday, as the name very much implies. And KJ, it sounds like back in April 2020, you started this account with the simple goal of just highlighting Black-owned restaurants that were open during COVID. But it's since grown into an aggregate landing page for people who are intentional about spending their dollars with Black-owned food businesses, whether that's restaurants, consumer packaged good brands, chefs, caterers, recipe developers, cookbook authors, and even other Black food bloggers and influencers. So KJ's been nominated for a James Beard Award in social media this past year, and is also the creator of the video series entitled #BlackFoodFact, the 60-second Black food history lessons featured on the Today Show for making Black history more accessible. So excited to be in conversation and share this space with y'all, because these are exciting things that you are up to. I want to hear more about how you all bring play into the work and into the communities that you're together with. So one of the things we do with these conversations is to set the table virtually. And KJ, I think you called it adult show and tell. It's a very good description, I think. And it's essentially a time for you to bring into this space what you want to share with the community. It's also a way to honor y'all in your wholeness, so that you set the tone for how you're entering and relating to each other and to this space. So I'd love to invite Kai. Maybe you can kick us off with that. How would you like to set the table today to welcome play? And just a reminder for accessibility purposes, if you could state your name and briefly describe yourself visually.
Hello, my name is Kai Tzeng. I'm wearing a little bear hat right now. Got black hair, got a checkered sweater. Thank you all for having me. And today for the table, I brought what I feel like is something that reminds me of a portal, which is this big container of soup that I've been brewing. And just right over here, I'm going to go grab it really fast. Here we go. So in this pot of soup right here, I've got all of the different memories of my ancestors and our collective ancestors. And I've just been steaming it for, I think probably at this point, maybe 15 weeks in my basement. And I've got in here some creativity sprinkled in and some microorganisms brewing and breathing and breathing into life. So I hope I could share this with everybody. Just don't mind the smell. It's a little stinky, but I'm going to just set it on the table right here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kai. That sounds good. I feel like I can kind of get the scent of that soup too. 15 weeks is like gotta be flavorful, right? So thank you for inviting us in to that experience with you. KJ, I'd love to offer you the chance to do the same. How would you like to set the table to welcome play with folks today? And again, if you could describe yourself visually, just briefly, that would be wonderful.
Thank y'all for having me. My name is KJ Kearney. As far as the description, I will say I'm wearing a gray t-shirt, oversized black frames because I have a huge head, a pink knit beanie, which is kind of like my thing. I wear knit or Scully's or wherever you're from, whatever you call it. And my skin is quite almondy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm that guy. What am I bringing to the table? I brought, I'm wearing what I brought. I don't know if I can show you. Let me see if I can swing it down. So this is a t-shirt that represents a lady named, there we go. Edna Lewis. Edna Lewis is considered the grand dame. You know what? I'm going to do it like this. There we go. She's considered the grand dame of Southern cooking. This t-shirt is actually designed in a very popular, or what was a very popular hip hop album cover style in the 90s by a company called Pen and Pixel. They made very like ridiculous album covers. And so I was thinking, how can I teach people about Black food history or Black food revolutionaries in a way that is both fun and unassuming? Anyone might think that, oh, this is like an album t-shirt until you like really look at it and it says Edna. That's not a very popular rap name. So when I wear it, I get a lot of questions of like, well, what is that? And who is she? And it allows me to have a conversation with people without having to beat them over the head. Because, as we'll discuss later on, a part of play is getting people involved and wanting to participate. So I get people to participate in Black history without them even knowing it by wearing shirts like this. So thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to having a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. I didn't even see that before. That's like a clever way to invite people into the space. Both of you did that, I feel, just now, doing it so naturally, with just how you like offer and open the conversation with us. So I just like love how each of your like play styles have started to shine through already. I think Kai with like the whole performance and very like imagination centric aspect of it. It's beautiful to see. And KJ, with you just like already having just like an invitation literally on your shirt into conversation and play for this community. That's beautiful to see. And truly, it's like already super fun. So I just wanted to get into how you all relate to play a little bit. So earlier, I think it was last week or earlier this week, we shared out a little bit of Cindy Suarez's chapter on play from their book, The Power Manual. Just paraphrasing, there's an idea in there that play isn't just an activity, it's a state of mind that brings pleasure, it brings creativity, it brings innovation, and it's a choice to do something that kind of challenges us, but like in a safe space. So I know each of you approach play in different ways because you're very different types of creatives, but I just wanted to hear a little bit about how you relate to the experience of play in your life and work. I'm gonna start with you, Kai, because I love how you bring this sense of curiosity and wonder, and that perspective, like that questioning of perspective, into your work. And it's like, I don't know, it's like an imagination energy shot or something with whenever I interact with you and what you do. And I don't know, would you care to share some experiences around play with us?
Some experiences around play. Well, I think one thing that is coming to mind recently is I've recently had a big transition in my life. And so to bring that into playfulness, instead of having a going away party, I wrote this play for my community to improv into. And so we had people who were doing the music and people who are doing dancing and people who are doing the sacred work of witnessing, and also having different prompts in there for people to come in and play with us. So my orientation to play is there's many different levels and different ways for people to tap into it, and just trying to make it as accessible as possible. Because like you were saying in that article by Cindy Suarez, play can only be cultivated in a place of safety. So I think it's hard for me to be like, my orientation to play is very much about how can I be comfortable in this space? How do I create a space of comfort for others too?
I love it. And do you feel like play, like how you relate to it, does that like stay in the realm of just your work, or does it like shine through across like your life in general? Kai?
I think probably in general. I think that life is much more fun seeing it as an adventure, which is of course, like, I think that certain things in my life allow me to see life in that kind of way, for sure. But yeah, I just think that we can always return to a child perspective and see the world as what it could be, what is possible, what is sprouting, what is different, what is change, what is new.
I love it. Yeah. There's like a totally an energy about that, like what happens in those like moments of change. I'd love to offer the same prompt to you, KJ, because it's also a joy. It's a joy to tune into Black Food Fridays. I also follow your account very closely. It's hilarious. Sometimes I feel like I like can't not chuckle when I see some of your stuff, because you lean into humor a lot. And it's very inviting, just like how you are in person. I know you've talked about how you see play and humor as a way to invite people in, especially into conversation and supporting community. But how would you describe your relationship with play in your work and in your life?
My relationship with play is calculated. And what I mean by that is I played sports my whole life, even through college. I played college football. And what I learned going from little league to high school to college is that while football is a game, when the stakes change, it's not fun anymore. So then it's not play, then it becomes a job, then it becomes work. So football was play up until my junior year of college, when I was like, oh, these people don't actually care about me. Like they have a job to do. They're paying for their kids' braces, on the backs of unpaid 17 to 22-year-old kids. So my senior year, I was like, I'm not playing anymore. Because it wasn't fun. It wasn't. I knew I wasn't going to the NFL, but it wasn't fun anymore. So I stopped. And even now, with the work I do, I'm a full-time community organizer, both with Black Food Fridays, but in the real world, I work for a nonprofit where I do organizing. And again, what I find is the same thing. Like a lot of the issues that we work on as an organization that I care about, that affect the diaspora that I'm a part of, they're serious issues. But I'm also Southern, so there's this phrase that a lot of us use in the South that you get more flies with honey, and so that is a mentality that I bring to my work, whether I'm doing it with Black Food Fridays or whether I'm doing it in actual proximity in the real community, is I'm always trying to think of like, what is the least jarring, the most inviting, the most inclusive, and then also the funniest way to get people engaged with me so that we can build those relationships and then get to the real world. Because relationships are built at the speed of trust. So the quicker we can trust each other, like Kai said, right? In order to play, you have to feel safe. And so the quicker we can get to trust, the quicker we can play and also be serious about the work that's ahead of us. So that's how I bring play into my work. It's calculated, right? Like I like to have fun, but I also like to be productive, especially in community work. I don't want to waste my community members' time. So balancing those two is kind of calculated for me.
Nice. I love the how you narrated that, like how that perspective has evolved throughout your life too, because I could see where you're coming from on that. And calculated is like, it's a tool. It sounds like you're really talking about play as a tool in your toolbox that you're using. So you both started to sort of touch on this. This was the next question I had up for you all, with how play, when it's centered or when creativity is centered in some of these culture change and liberatory spaces, the effect it can have. So I would love to invite y'all to share a little bit more about what it looks like when play does show up in these, culture change realms. Maybe I'll go kick it off to you first this time, KJ, but could you share some examples of when you've seen play or creativity in action as part of liberatory movements and spaces?
Yeah, man, there's so many good examples I can pull from. I'll do two very, very quick stories. One is on the family level. So I have a basketball team worth of nieces and nephews. One of my nephews is 5 years old. We call him Kung Fu Kearney because he's full of action. And he is probably the biggest fan of Black Food Fridays on the planet. Not because at 5 years, I would love to say my nephew is super deep and profound, but he's not. He's 5. But he reminds me every Friday that it's Black Food Fridays because we've turned supporting Black-owned businesses into a game. So what we'll do is when he's with me, we'll go to Target or Walmart or some place where there's a selection of Black products, and we'll play rock, paper, scissors so he can pick which snack he wants. Now, I've already rigged the game where every snack or every selection is going to be a Black selection, right? But for him, it's just the fun of beating his uncle. And let me be clear, I don't let him win. Like, I think he's cheating. He is definitely way better at rock, paper, scissors than any 5-year-old should be. But like the fun of playing with his uncle and getting a snack and all that stuff. Now he's like every Friday, he's like, yo, it's Black Food Fridays. We got to go, Uncle Cajun. We got to go do something. And again, right now it's just for fun. But my hope is that as he gets older, he'll start learning like, oh, this isn't just about games, or this is bigger than just that, right? I think another real life story in terms of, again, being fun and using fun and playing as a way towards liberation is in one of the neighborhoods that I organize in. It's called Chicora, and Chicora, Cherokee, actually, to be specific. And it's a historically Black neighborhood. The average income is like $24,000 a year. Most of the people do not own their house. They're renting, like one of those neighborhoods. And what we'll do is I'll have CEC meetings, community engagement council meetings. That's not actually a meeting. I'll just like provide wine and like Chewies and cookies and invite people to come so that they can meet their neighbors and meet other people who are concerned about the improvement or the well-being of this neighborhood. So we market it as a meeting, but it's not really a meeting. There's not an agenda other than get to know the people around you, because they're the ones that you're going to have to rely on when things go down. And you can interpret things go down however you want to. So those are just two examples of how I try to utilize fun and play into, covering up the real work of we got shit to do and we got to change some things, but bringing people in under the guise of not guise, but under the tool of having fun and letting the work go from there.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. Ooh, I see some people are reacting to that in the chat. Play as a strategy. Kai, I know when we've been chit-chatting about some of these things before, you've talked about play as a way to connect people to embodied experience, and to encourage connection instead of disconnection, that sort of state that we often find ourselves in. I'd love to offer you the same question, like how you've seen like play and this creative energy being brought into our liberatory spaces, and what you see come alive when that's in action.
Definitely. Oh my gosh, I feel so privileged to be asked this question. First of all, thank you. Yeah, just to share, I'm an improv facilitator, and I really like to play in improv spaces because I feel like there's a part of improv that feels liberatory to me, because so much of what we're told in this society is that there's one way of doing things, one way of like even like orienting our bodies, or maybe orienting our bodies like that. And so I feel like being able to step outside and to kind of connect with maybe our more nature self or more child self feels like a way to be in that just like pushing against the norm kind of. And so one story I want to share is a story from I guess it's like a workshop that me and my friend Selena held, called Creative Reawakening, which was bringing BIPOC folks into the forest and to activate our creative, just like voices in ourselves. And we started it off with a consent game. It's just like a very simple kind of like movement consent game. And there was somebody who at the end of that game felt like, a lot coming up for them around how they're feeling, mostly like red, because we go through colors around like where people can touch us in when we're playing in improv, like red, yellow, and green. And how it just, and it was really just because we went through the whole embodiment, and it was in a group setting. I think that for them, it was like, it broke open a lot. And that was at the very beginning of the workshop. And towards the very end, after going through all of these different improv games and times together, they had a very different orientation to how they felt about the consent. And I think that that was like an example of building trust through a held space. And the other example I wanted to give was one time me and my community held this party for Valentine's Day, which was a Reclaim V-Day party, which was based in bell hooks, and like had a lot of different like homages to bell hooks. And we brought together like 10 collaborators to like co-facilitate this like playful event, which like in one end, it's like, oh, it's just a fun party. And on the other hand, it's like Valentine's Day is a very corporatized day that has like taken love and claimed it as like this monogamous way of being. And so being able to be playful and breaking out of norms feels like one way I've seen me and my community practice this.
I love it. I love that. Thank you. Play as a way to push against the like preconceived norms. I love that. Thank you for sharing all that. And the different ways that sort of like your work intersects with that pushing of norms. I wanted to quickly invite folks to do a little chat action. So just a question: what does play make possible in your life? What does it make possible for you? We'll pop that prompt into the chat box if you all want to drop your thoughts on that in throughout. Please, we invite you to. So I wanted to move us to another question that's a little bit more about how we get ourselves in the space where we're ready to play. So we've been talking about different ways that we see play in action, how you all relate to it. But let me just say that for a lot of us, so maybe not true for everybody, but we're all not in the play mode a lot of the time. We're a lot of the times conditioned to be in work mode, or if we're like, maybe fight mode, if you're like busy organizing and fighting the good fight, or some other mode. Usually it's not play mode by and large. But like we've been surfacing here, showing up, being willing and ready to play, having that invitation open to you, and having that like ability to lean into joy and pleasure is so important for us, not just in, like these discrete spaces where play is like the objective, but like in general in life. So my question to you all like now is, how do you feed yourselves and maybe your community to be ready to play? Like, how do you get yourself in the mind space, maybe the literal space, to enable yourselves to engage in that creativity, to access that flow and that growth that comes with being in play mode? So I'll start with you, Kai, this time. Would you care to share some of the ways that you nourish yourself and your community so you're able to show up for play?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to share first is like there's so many different scales to play and playfulness. Like when I first was introduced to freestyling in like kind of a cypher space, I was in New York, and I pretty much never freestyled. I was so embarrassed, and I would just be in these circles and people would be like really just so talented. And I was like, I could never be that. And then fast forward to maybe 5 or 6 years now, I'm in a pretty deep practice of improv, music improv. And I think I wish I knew at that time that I didn't have to be at that level to be participating. Like there was a way for me to just kind of like ooh and ah and clap my hands or stomp my feet. And that would have been a stretch for me. So I guess the way that I hope that my community can get into that practice of play is just seeing where people are at. And I really love hearing about folks who are interested in, maybe they just want to like try writing a song for the first time, maybe just like a written poem, or maybe they want to try a new medium, and trying to find ways to integrate that like little stretch zone into the group work that we're doing has been really fun. And right now we're trying to work on an album together of liberatory songs, and just kind of seeing where people want to stretch a little bit to step into this group project together.
That sounds fun. I definitely want to hear that. If you all like capture the magic in some way, ready to share anytime soon. KJ, I want to like extend the same question to you, because you're out there doing a lot of, like organizing, and I know you are very intentional about how you invite people into the space. I'd love to hear some more about how you feed yourself and your communities so that people can access that play mode.
Yeah, I mean, how I feed myself, first of all, I don't know what the phrase is. I think it's ambivert. Like I'm an introvert who can like be an extrovert if I need to. Like I'm really good at going back and forth, but my general, I guess, sense of protection for my own self and my own sanity, and to get myself in a place where I can do this work is I'm a card carrying member of the nap ministry. Like I believe in naps. I believe in the power of rest. I believe that rest is a form of resistance, especially as a Black person, from Charleston, South Carolina, which is the epicenter of American chattel slavery, right? Like rest is a way where I can let people know, like, you can't have my energy, right? My energy is mine to give and mine to distribute when I feel like it. And so I encourage myself and others to rest, right? So they can get, you can't pour from an empty cup. You feel me? And so if you have nothing inside of you, there's nothing for you to give. So in addition to being an advocate for rest, I'm also an advocate for joy. And that's another thing, especially as a Black man, that we don't talk about what makes you happy. We don't talk about what brings you joy. Our conversations are, I mean, they can be great conversations, but they're usually not centered around finding your own happiness. And so I encourage, when I facilitate meetings, I always talk about two things, or I try to talk about two things. One is I'm allowing this space to be a space of failure. You are allowed to fail here. As people don't try because they're afraid of looking stupid. Kai, I'm sure you can speak to this, right? When you're doing your improv, is half the battle is just getting people comfortable with the idea that you might suck. And that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, that's perfectly fine. So number one, I want to set the table that failure is not a bad thing, at least not in my meetings. And then number two is that I encourage people to find the joy in whatever it is we're doing. And the only way you can find joy in what we're doing is to know what brings you joy internally. So do some internal work, sit with yourself, read some books, watch some TEDx's or whatever you need to do, to figure out. It took me a long time. I'm not gonna lie. I'll be 40 in May, and I probably didn't realize what made me happy, what brought me joy until my early 30s, because I just never took the time to do so. We don't talk about that in school. We don't, you know what I mean? We didn't talk about it in college. Like, nobody talks about, like, hey, let's take some time to find out what brings you joy. So I try to bring that to my organizing, and I hope that, again, a part of building those relationships with people is letting them know it's okay to look dumb in front of me. I'm not going to hold that against you. And I want to talk about what makes you happy, because if we know what makes you happy, then it makes it easier for us to try to find solutions to these problems, because we know what the end result is. We know what that joy is that we're trying to go for.
Thanks. I feel that. Yeah, I love that, where you're taking that. I'd love to sort of like do a little add-on question, to invite you to kind of why don't we dream big a little bit about, what's possible, when we have play and joy and sort of this fun energy, at the center. Like, what if it was the heart of how we were approaching culture change, how we were thinking about transforming culture? I think, when we were first chit-chatting about this, topic in general, I think, both you, Kai, and KJ talked about sort of this like fight energy, or this like orientation to like standing against stuff, and how truly like revolutionary it is to just like pivot that. And like you're saying just now, KJ, like leaning into that joy, instead. So I wonder if you might like do a little bit of like live imagination play with us right now about like what's possible if we lead with, creativity, with play in in our movements, in our social change movements. Maybe I'll kick it to you, Kai.
I wanted to thank you, KJ, for that little plug about rest, because this question that you're asking, Ada, I think is a question around, what would the world look like if we did have rest and we did have spaciousness to be in play, and creativity, because I think that so many people right now really are just trying to survive, are in survival mode, and it's really hard to access that creativity when you are just like focused in on just being able to pay your bills, being able to make sure that your basic needs are taken care of. So it's an interesting question, because I almost like can't even think quite into play yet. But then I come back and I realize that liberatory world is very much in collaboration with creativity and play, and that, so that world, I think that there's a place for everybody for all children, for all people, for all elders. I really do feel like there is a place for everybody in a village, in community. And I think that the more that we're able to access like the creative ways in which we have our sacred roles, is kind of how I imagine that world to look like, is knowing that there is our creative selves are the people who we've been waiting for, and to really cultivate that, and to cultivate that within a village, within a group of people who see us as that too, I think is really great. And that's kind of why I love improv spaces, is because for maybe an hour and a half, we can really play into that imaginative future of us all collectively collaborating together.
I love that. Oh, that made me feel so feel like I'm floating a little bit hearing you narrate that, Kai. KJ, I want to ask you the same, offer the same invitation to sort of like dream about what what's possible when, we lean into that creativity, that play mode, as sort of like the leading edge of our culture change spaces. You do a lot of organizing in your work, and you sort of are doing it, but like, what if this was something that wasn't like weird, like an exception? What if it was the norm? What could the world look like?
Well, I think, first of all, the idea of waking up every day and thinking about how you can center play in your work is revolutionary in and of itself, right? Like, just that mindset is wild in the sense, right? Because we're not given the space to do that. So just being able to do that would be wild enough. But if we're going to dream bigger, what this also says to me is, if I'm centering joy, then I'm not centering my fears. I'm not centering my oppression, my oppressors. I'm centering me and my people and what makes us happy. And we're going to lead whatever work we're doing with that happiness and that joy, and not with the eye towards, white gaze or misogyny, or, any other forms of patriarchy, or, any other forms of oppression. Just the act of simply just thinking about joy first and foremost that's the flex, right? Like, it's not even what you do with it afterwards is up to you, but just waking up every day and saying, whatever work I'm doing, it's from a place of joy and fun and play. I think that's the flex. And truthfully, I'm going to try to do that. Like, I'm going to try to incorporate that in my life. Like, waking up and every decision I make is like, okay, this is something I have to do, but how can I make this fun? I'm going to challenge myself to do that. I think that's an outstanding question, Ada. And, this time next year, I hope to have a very profound answer for you. But right now, just the ideal of doing that is a flex in and of itself.
I love that. That is a flex. It ties back to what we were thinking about earlier about like our relationships to play. Maybe one more add-on, and then I promise I'll stop adding on questions to this one. But KJ, sort of riffing off of what you're bringing up here about like adding, like bringing that orientation into your life. Where are you all craving more play? I know you all kind of do it. It's already part of like your work life situation, but is there a place specifically, like if you could add more play there, like to an area of your life or work, like what would that be? Or maybe your communities is another way to think about it. Because I feel like, this is one of those things where it's like, it's a complete perspective shift, but I want to hear like where you think it's needed the most.
I'll be honest with you, bro. I need to add more play into my health journey. You know what I mean? Like taking care of myself, taking care of my body, taking care of my mind. I think, especially with playing sports my entire life, working out was part of the job. You know what I mean? Like running sprints, lifting weights, stretching, squatting, all that stuff was part of the job. And as soon as I like tied football with work, then I also inadvertently didn't realize that I didn't really take care of myself, right? That also went away because that was working out was tied to the whole football thing. And so now I'm getting back into working out. My father has been having some health issues. And so, I'm like, dog, like I got to figure something out, and working out is not fun to me. Let me just say that out loud. I'm sure from somebody in here, running gives you a high and that's great, but not me because I'm fat. And so I got to find me some activities that actually are fun that will allow me to then take care of myself, right? Like I'm not even worried about losing weight. I don't have a number to get to, like none of that stuff. I just want to find something fun. I'm leaning towards pickleball right now. We'll see how that goes. But like I'm looking to add more play into my health journey. Thank you for asking.
I love that. Yeah, I can relate to that. It's not working out like the I guess the bias I have is not like my traditional sense of like what is fun, but it's different for different people, right? So Kai, I want to ask you the same thing. Like I know it feels like you're like at play a lot, but is there anywhere in your life or maybe in your communities where you feel play needs to show up more?
Yeah. Oh, it's a good question. I think I would love to see more playfulness in my home family, and maybe more playfulness in just schools. I think that feels important to me. And I guess when I say like my home family, one thing that recently happened is I met my nibbling for the first time, and it was so sweet. It was just like a very intergenerational hangout that we had with my auntie and with my nibbling and also my like cousins. And we're actually not related. My grandmother adopted a daughter in Taiwan, and it was kind of an informal adoption, but like their energy in my family has like already shifted things. And so I just see children as these magical teachers that are able to show us the way of how do we be ourselves, how do we be in play. And so I guess I'm dreaming of more of that, also in our school spaces, because children are already there and they're already ready to share their gifts. So just hoping for more intergenerational weaving.
I love that. It's beautiful. But what you shared with there's sort of like an arc of time thing, like how can we all like weave play into our interactions a little bit more, that I feel like really resonates. And KJ, yeah, thank you for also like speaking to that health journey aspect as well, because it feels like a lot of these things get compartmentalized. And I think when you flip the orientation to like play as a mindset and just an orientation to joy, it really does, like, I feel like there's space for it almost everywhere. Like, how can we make joy central to all parts of our lives? So we are coming up on the hour. I'm going to transition us into our sort of final thoughts here, but I wanted to add another chat prompt for you all who are tuning in. Just the question, what do you need in your life to be able to show up to play? Everybody has their different way of playing, but what do you need to be able to show up to do that? If you want to pop that in the chat while we're doing this here. I want to thank you, Kai and KJ, so far for sharing your wisdom, your time, all these thoughts and experiences that you've offered and brought into the space with us today. I'm having fun. It's a joy. Just listening to you, both of you, speak on some of these things. And, people have been sharing gratitude and whatnot in the chat box. I want to, before we get into like the closing stuff, I want to kick off a little inverted Q&A that we do in these around the table conversations. And instead of honestly like opening up the space for questions, we offer both of you, Kai and KJ, a chance to leave folks who are listening into this conversation with a thought, or maybe a group of thoughts, maybe question for people to continue to sit with and chew on around this conversation, or something related to this conversation that we're having. And this is basically just like a chance for you to drop another nugget or two of wisdom. But I'd love to just open that space for each of you to do a little bit of that. So I'll kick it to you first, Kai.
Okay, maybe I'll offer a little activity for you all to practice in case you're walking around and seeing the world around you. Something that can be really fun is finding a little being out there. Maybe it's a daffodil, maybe it's a tree, maybe it's a little bird, and speak to it. Try to imagine what it's saying and respond to it and see how that feels. That's what I'm going to leave y'all with.
I love it. Feel like I'm going to do that on my walk a little bit later on with my toddler, actually. KJ, I'd love to invite you to share something with folks who are listening in today.
So I will leave you with my overarching philosophy on life. And for just a tiny bit of context, this phrase that I'm going to give you, I did not create. When I was in high school, I was in this program called the Beau Affair program, which is like a rites of passage for young Black men in Charleston. So I was like 17 years old. I was in this group of other smart, nerdy Black dudes, and one of our mentors, his name, we call them elders. One of our elders, his name is Atlee Prince. And I couldn't stand Atlee Prince. I thought he was a know-it-all. I couldn't stand him. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, everything he said, I like almost live by it, right? And one of the phrases that he gave us was that truly successful people are able to distinguish the obvious from the important. I'm going to say that again. Truly successful people are able to distinguish the obvious from the important. And Black Food Fridays is a living testimony to that philosophy, right? Because if you go to my Instagram account, you see memes, you see food porn, you see, jokes and all this other stuff. And what people don't realize until they're like 3 months in is that they're actually being radicalized, right? Like when you wake up 3 months later after looking at my memes and, restaurant suggestions and food items or whatever, and you wake up and it's a random Friday and you say, oh, it's Black Food Fridays, I need to go support a Black person. You have just been radicalized. You don't even realize it, because where you spend your money is a form of political action, right? And so my goal is to not beat people over the head, is to slowly lull them into action. And so it's obvious that Black people, and all people of color, but I'm Black, so I'm gonna speak from a Black perspective, that Black people are oppressed, that Black women, are one of the most educated groups in this country, and yet their pay does not match their education level. I mean, we can go on and on and on. Police brutality, the whole nine. Like, that's obvious. And I could have created an Instagram account that just harped on that. What I decided to do was use play, was use fun, was use food, something that many people, no matter where you are on the political spectrum or how you identify from a gender standpoint, everybody eats, everybody loves food. And so I use food as a tool to radicalize people, to support Black people. And so that's what I would offer to you. What in your life can you analyze through the lens of distinguishing the obvious from the important? And that might actually help you get to the goal that you're trying to reach, right? This thing bothers you. That's obvious. What's important about this thing that bothers you? Is it just one man that you have to convince, right? Is it a group of people that you have to convince? Is it an amount of money that you need to raise? Is it a policy that you need to change? Like, what is really the thing that's gnawing at you so you can solve that issue? Once you start thinking of your world in terms of distinguishing the obvious from the important, I think you will find a lot more solutions in your life and a lot more hopefulness that you can change things and you can do things once you really understand what's really going on. So that's what I will leave you. Be successful by distinguishing the obvious from the important. And I'm out.
Love it.